Good evening, good evening. I love a good intro with good music. If you know me, I'm here for it. My name is Persia Nicole from 92Q, and tonight it is all about keeping the lights on with the Maryland Public Service Commission. Our guest this evening, as you see in front of you, will help shed some light on the worlds of utility regulation, what policies are in place to protect customers, and what resources are available to assist you. First, let's welcome on in Fred Hoover, the chair of the Maryland Public Service Commission. Welcome, welcome.
No, thank you very much.
And then Stephanie Bolton, the director of the Commission's Consumer Affairs Division. Welcome in.
Oh, thank you for having us.
Absolutely. Now, let's first talk about, Mr. Chair, what does a Public Service Commission do? For those people who do not know about it, what exactly does the Commission do?
So the Maryland Public Service Commission was created by the Maryland General Assembly to regulate what are known as public utilities. And those are the companies that provide electricity, natural gas, and telecommunication services. And they had been, in the past, complete monopolies. And so therefore, the government decided that in order for these companies who provide what we refer to as essential services, electricity to your house, natural gas to your house, and telecommunications, that in order for them to raise the price of their service and to guarantee that they provided reliable and safe service, there needed to be a government agency that supervised them. And so we have general supervisory powers over the utility companies. And in the Baltimore area, we're talking about Baltimore Gas and Electric as the main provider of electricity in the city of Baltimore.
And I want to remind you, as we're having the conversation tonight, we do have about 30 minutes, but you can ask the questions in the chat, and if you pop right back on the screen, and we can make sure we get them answered tonight. Also, if you are, in and out, if you're cooking dinner or whatever you might be doing, you can also watch us later on as well. Now, what does PSC not regulate? And of course, it's regulations.
The one essential service that we do not have any regulatory authority, and this may disappoint some of your listeners, is water companies that are run by government entities. So the Baltimore City Water Department, we have no regulatory authority over that, just as we do not have any regulatory authority over the water company that serves Montgomery County and Prince George's County, the WSSC. We do regulate what are known as private water companies. And in certain parts of the outer suburbs of Baltimore, there are, in fact, some private water companies. We do regulate them. But we also don't regulate cell telephone service. The telephone service that we regulate is the old-fashioned landline service that used to be provided by the telephone company, and we don't regulate either internet or cable TV. So those services are considered to be competitive entities, and so therefore don't require any government supervision.
Some more that I get sometimes are oil and propane. We do not regulate those. And sometimes we get calls related to energy assistance, and that is a separate government agency. We do not regulate other government agencies.
Which is good to have that conversation and the breakdown. So a lot of people are like, hey, can you help me with this? Or, I'm having issues with this or this problem. But now you know for sure these are the things that you regulate and you do not regulate.
Working in consumer affairs, steering people towards where they need to go, whether it's us or a different entity, is so much of what we do. So my team handles complaints from the public, as well as questions, general inquiries, and our main role in consumer affairs is in compliance, making sure that the utility companies follow the rules, and also sharing information, resolving disputes. And we stay busy. So in 2023, we had about 2,400 complaints, and there's about 12 of us. So we stay busy.
Now, Ms. Bolton, can you share maybe some of the complaints that maybe you were able to help through? You say, okay, I understand this is what's going on. Now here's how we can help.
Probably the most common complaints we get in are people who have questions about their bills, usually people who don't understand why their usage is so high. And we have a conversation about, did you have company? Did you have unexpected usage because you were home more often? What was the weather looking like? And We also handle complaints related to third-party retail energy suppliers that we'll be sharing a little bit more about later.
Okay, so really for me, as a homeowner as well, I love that Maryland utility customers have a choice, in this competitive market, right? You can choose where kind of you want to be at. When it comes to electricity supply, Mr. Chair, can you explain what energy choice is?
Sure. So, as I mentioned at the outset, the original scheme was when the companies were uh, what were known as being complete operations, where the utility provided every piece of the product. That was a monopoly operation. About 25 years ago, the legislature decided to embark on what they referred to as energy choice. And so they divided the provision of electricity into two separate entities: BG&E, that provided the electricity into your house, but the people that make the electricity, the people that own the power plants, it was decided that that could actually be what was known as a competitive service. And so a whole variety of companies got involved in the production of electricity, and some of them owned traditional power plants that ran on fossil fuels like coal and natural gas, but some others, it created an opportunity to provide renewable energy. So energy that was produced by wind turbines or solar panels or things like that. So it gave people the opportunity to shop for the production of the electricity that they used in their house. And you could shop for the electricity either based on the actual price. They would compete just like you would buy competing brands of toothpaste or mouthwash or things like that. Or you could choose your electricity based on how it was made. So for those individuals who didn't want electricity made by fossil fuels because they were concerned about the effect on the planet and the environment, they could select electricity that only came from renewable resources. And so this electricity choice idea provided customers with the ability to actually choose who supplied their electricity, but it would still be delivered by BG&E.
Mhm. Now, of course, it's a whole lot of different things, right? A lot of people think it might be schemes and scams, and you don't really know. Maybe somebody might come knocking on your door and say they have this, they have that. What should customers be aware of or cautious about when it comes to choosing energy supply? And it's also, what kind of issues does your office see in this area? Ms. Bolton, if you want to take on this question.
Well, actually, let me
Okay.
have one lead into that. So the
Okay.
only problem with the idea of competitive choice is
Mhm.
whenever you open a product up to competition, some suppliers are gonna play by the rules, but unfortunately, competitive markets and competitive pressures have businesses try and cut corners and do other things. And so over the years, we developed some problems with how these companies who were trying to sell you electricity would try to entice you into buying electricity from them. And I'll let Stephanie describe all the various ways they did that.
So some of the people who switch to a third-party retail energy supplier, they do it to save money. They do it because they want to get a greener product, generation that came from solar or wind instead of fossil fuels. But what we tell people is that they really have to do their homework about these products. For instance, do you know what you pay for your energy right now? That's your first step. So BG&E, that's my service territory. They've got their, let's see, oh, wrote it down. Okay, they've got their electric going for about 11 cents per kilowatt hour and their gas going for about 57 cents per therm. Most people don't have that information off the top of their head. So something that the commission did was create a website, mdenergychoice.com, where you can go to compare different supply offers. You can type in information like your usage, who your utility is, and then get the price to compare. Different supplier price options pop up, and you can make an informed choice. One important thing to note is if you're dealing with a variable rate or a fixed rate, because some of these introductory offers look really good,
Mm.
but then they'll last a month or a couple months and your offer will go up. And if you don't stay on top of it, which, that can be challenging to do, um, then you find yourself paying more for your electricity than you otherwise would have if you didn't switch. And that's what we're trying to help people avoid. Another thing that I like to make people aware of is you know, when people come to your door, maybe they'll knock on your door and they'll say, I have a supply source for you that's going to save you a ton of money, and maybe you don't read the fine print and you sign on. Uh, that usually results in calls to my office. Uh, so, whenever somebody comes to you at the door or at a big box store, it's more high pressure. Uh, and I tell people to try to cool off the situation, give it some time, say, do you have any materials? I'm going to take this home and think about it. Because at the end of the day, a salesperson's job is to create that sense of urgency to get your enrollment right away, but there's no need for that.
Yeah, I think, and the message that I'd want to give to customers is think about the fact that in normal situations, this is a bill that you pay every month. And so if you don't make any choice at all, you get what's known as standard offer service. And so you get the bill from BG&E and you just pay it. And so if you're going to make a choice and make a change for a significant amount of money that you're going to be spending to help provide electricity or natural gas to your house, you really should take the time to kind of analyze it and think about it and decide for yourself what is the best thing for you. So making a sort of spot purchase or a purchase that just because someone kind of pitches you an idea that sounds good at the moment probably isn't the best strategy when it comes to picking a product like this. It is something, and there's lots of information available. If the companies are reputable, they won't have any problem in providing you all the information about how they get their electricity, how their electricity is priced, what the contract is. And as Stephanie mentioned, there's lots of information on our website, and also the Consumer Advocate Office, the Maryland Office of People's Counsel, another government agency that is charged with protecting residential ratepayers. They have lots of information too. So there's ways to find out how to get the best product, and you should just take your time with this and make an educated choice as opposed to a snap decision.
And this is assuming you get the option of making a decision. There is a practice called slamming that unfortunately we see happening in and around Maryland, where you don't even know that you've been changed to a third-party retail energy supplier until you notice your bill's going up a little bit and you're not quite sure why. Maybe you open it up and take a look, and sure enough, there on your bill is the name of a company you don't recognize. It's not going to be at the top of the bill. It's going to be somewhere, couched a little bit lower, a little bit farther in. So it's not going to be immediately obvious. So the way this happens, it happens through a variety of different channels, but the way that we see most is somebody comes to the door and gets the person who answers, maybe it's a homeowner, maybe it's not, to bring out their bill. And once they brought out their bill, that has some confidential information on it that you might not realize, but you want to keep private. When you get a choice ID number, companies or salespeople from companies can use that information to switch you without your knowledge. That's what we call slamming, and that's something that we're trying to get the word out about because it happens, and when it does, we are who you want to get in touch with.
Yeah. And in fact, this actually occurred originally when they made changes in the telecommunications service and you were able to buy long distance service. So before the explosion of sort of cell phones and all of the integrated services that way, you used to have a choice as to how you could pick long distance companies, either AT&T or MCI or Sprint. Those were the three providers. And the problem came that it was very easy. All they needed was your phone number to switch you from one long distance carrier to the other. And so this slamming practice started in the telecommunications industry. So when they allowed for competition in electricity, they thought the way to fix that problem was to create this consumer ID number, which is essentially your electricity social security number. This is how you ought to think about it. And so the only way your service could be switched is if the company provided BG&E this customer ID number. And that was the key to doing it. So a lot when you are approached by these, and this usually happens when they come to your door because you don't usually carry your utility bill around with you. But if they come to your door and they ask to look at your utility bill because they want to try and examine things, what they're really looking for is that customer ID number. And if they get that, then they can engage in this practice that Stephanie is talking about. And the problem is you won't find out at the soonest until like a month later when you get a bill from somebody that you've never heard of for electricity that you didn't want to buy.
Mr. Chair, that's so crazy. That actually happened to me. But I don't think they switched it. But a lot of times you feel pressure. Like people come to your door, you're cooking dinner, doing whatever. You're like, okay, yes, what is it? And they're like, oh, can I see? And then you kind of are like, okay, this is what it is. They tell you can save all this money, and who doesn't like to save money? Okay. And then it comes down to it, and then they get the information that they weren't supposed to have. But as someone who was trying to save money, you don't even realize that.
Yeah, and Stephanie mentioned earlier this problem about what's known as variable rates, and so the problem is this: when the people who produce electricity, it's a product that is subject to a lot of different factors. Whatever the fuel source they use to sort of make the electricity, whether it's the wind blowing or burning something, the price of that product to make it tends to fluctuate a lot. And so if you have what's known as a variable rate, the company essentially is allowed to charge you whatever it costs them to procure the electricity for themselves that they're supplying to your house. And that's, a fair contractual situation if you agree to it. And you can sometimes save money when, if they have a situation where the price of making electricity is relatively low, but you're subject to wide fluctuations when there are extreme situations. And the two situations you need to be concerned about are when the weather gets really, really cold, the so-called polar vortexes, which we've had in Maryland over the last few years, or the flip side, when we have the lovely summer weather, when it's 100 degrees and 100% humidity for like a week or so, and you're running your air conditioner at full tilt. If you have a variable rate, you're going to wind up paying whatever it costs them to get electricity. And in those extreme weather situations, that's when we see the price of electricity to make electricity skyrocket.
Now, I do have another question too, because when you talk about protection in your home, when people come to your door and things, if you want to learn about maybe in that moment how they can save you money, instead of showing them your bill, is there another option for that? Is there something that they may have and you can ask, oh, what do you have these type of different variables? What are some questions you can ask?
Well, I think it, and then Stephanie can probably be more specific on this, but again, asking questions about, particularly the contract terms. So you want to find out from them, if they're going to say, we can offer you a price for electricity, and they'll usually refer to it as per kilowatt, because that's sort of the magic term for how we price electricity. And they'll say our price per kilowatt is so much lower than what you get from the standard offer service or from our competitors. So the questions you need to ask them is, well, how long can you guarantee me that price? Is this price going to be good for 6 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years? And then the other thing you want to find out from them is the other sort of terms of the contract. So if you sign up with them and make an agreement to have electricity provided by them, and you decide somewhere down the road you find a better product, or you're just not satisfied with them, is it going to cost you to get away from them? If you've signed a contract for a year and you decide after 6 months, I want to leave, are they going to try and charge you a price for leaving? The other thing you want to do is, and you have to be careful of, you may agree to a contract with them for a year, but the contract has the capacity to automatically renew itself unless you take a specific action to say, I don't want to renew this contract. And you have to be very careful in finding out from them what are the ways of how, if the contract is for a year, at the end of the year, do I have to do something to end this contract or renew this contract? Or is it going to renew on its own because I don't do something? And because they'll send you information about it, but they tend to not highlight the fact that, oh, you have to take action at a certain point, otherwise something's going to happen. So the do nothing option at the end of the contract can sometimes be harmful to customers.
And you can request a paper copy of your contract. A lot of times now, when people come to the door, they're going to come not with, papers for you to sign. They're going to come with a tablet, and they're going to scroll through, and you can scroll through. You should scroll through before you sign anything. But, at the end of the day, they're going to leave, and they are going to send you a signed contract to the email address you provided. And, if you don't use your email too often, maybe it goes to spam, maybe they mistyped something. There's a lot of things that can go wrong and make it that much harder for you to communicate with the company that you just contracted with. It is certainly legal to sign on the tablet instead of on a piece of paper. I think we've all DocuSigned so many things at this point in our lives now, but having an actual paper copy can make it a lot easier for you to find useful information, like who to get in touch with if you're having, remorse or regrets, or even who to get in touch with if you go back and read through the contract and you say, hey, I signed this, but what I am reading is not what the person at the door was saying. That's something we call misrepresentation, and that's as much of a problem as slamming. And that is something that our office can help you with as well.
Yeah, when it comes to the slamming and, of course, misrepresentation, a new, of course, energy choice law that passed last year that strengthens the consumer protections. What are some additional changes that are on the horizon that can protect us? Let's talk about that too.
Well, there's some. So this law was enacted because, as I mentioned, we've had this retail choice option in place for 25 years. And I think the members of the General Assembly had heard enough complaints from their constituents about sort of bad practices by companies that operated in this, that they felt that they needed to do a fairly dramatic revision of how these businesses operate. And so there's some provisions of this law that actually are going to affect the companies that operate in this sphere, one of which is they were originally required to get a license to operate in the state of Maryland from the Public Service Commission. But once they got that license, that was it. I mean, they got it forever. And so now the General Assembly decided that all of the companies that offer this kind of product are going to need to get relicensed. Just like you have to renew your driver's license, these companies are going to have to renew their business license since they come back in before us. So it's going to give Stephanie's folks and the other staff here at the Public Service Commission a chance to sort of examine how things have been going with these companies, how they've been operating, making sure that they understand the rules of the road and the regulations that apply to them. The other thing that the General Assembly did was they actually started to put some consumer protections and guardrails on the types of business practices and selling tactics that these companies can now engage in to try to restrict the ability for them to create opportunities for them to misrepresent or slam or do things like that. So it's a fairly broad-ranging piece of legislation that was designed to really provide with fairly significant consumer protections. Now, the one thing they did do, though, is they did try to sort of open up the market for renewable electricity. I think what the intent was to see if we can encourage more companies to provide so-called renewable energy products. So electricity is made from wind, from solar and other renewable products, to get more people to consider buying that type of electricity, because I think the thought was that not only would you get electricity for your house, but you could also help contribute to dealing with the climate change problem. And I don't know if you want to add other provisions from that law or not.
So in addition to the new licensing requirements for companies, and us being able to kind of take a look at their complaint record and other factors in relicensing them after that first 3-year period. And by the way, complaints against companies are available on our website. We have reports on that if your viewers wanted to check it out. But there's also a licensing requirement for salespeople. So the people who go door to door are not necessarily even representatives of the company. They might not be employees of the company that they're signing people up for. They may be sitting through about an hour's worth, at worst, an hour's worth of training and education, when this is a highly complex topic and the financial stakes are also pretty high for people if they're going to be committing to some of these products out there. So having licensing requirements, not just for these big companies, but for the individuals who come to your door, is really going to change the scene. Also, we were talking about green energy. Defining what green energy is going to make things interesting too. So people get more transparency about what it is that they're buying, what kind of product this is. Um, and I think that some of the price capping mechanisms that exist are going to prevent people from ending up in contracts where they're paying so much more for their electricity than they would have if they'd stayed with their utility.
Yeah, and regarding the green energy thing, I mean, it is going to be our responsibility, and I take it pretty seriously, that to make sure that the companies that are offering so-called green products are in fact offering legitimate renewable energy sources. So we'll be setting up a process for examining the offers that they make in that area to make sure that if you pay a little extra to get green energy, that you're actually getting the real thing. And Stephanie's folks are going to be conducting the training and the licensing process that we're going to go through with these companies. But the idea is to try to sort of persuade the people who've been sort of cutting corners and trying to cheat people to maybe leave the state and not offer these services anymore, so that people can be assured that the folks that are offering these products now will actually be legitimate companies. And while you still should spend a lot of time thinking about this and don't make a snap decision with it, you at least have some comfort level that the folks that are actually offering these products are in fact legitimate offers of legitimate products.
Mm. Yeah, and I know a lot of people kind of hopped on the screen as well. Shout out to you all. People said that some people have come to the door before, like has come to mind as well. Great information. Tonight really is all about us as people. We're trying to save money, but we also want to make sure we're safe and they're not taking our information and using different things with this. So this conversation is really for all of us to make sure we're gaining some great things from it. When it comes to Public Service Commission in the state of Maryland, doing what are they really doing to make utility bills more affordable? That's what we all kind of want at the end of the day. What are some steps being made towards that?
So, I mean, there's a variety of things that we can try to do, but we do this actually in concert with a lot of different government agencies. So one of the ways to try to help people deal with the energy burden and the price of paying their utility bills is to try to see that their houses use the least amount of energy that's needed to keep them comfortable. And so there's a program that was enacted many years ago by the state of Maryland known as Empower. And it actually requires the utility companies to offer products, services, advice to homeowners, to renters, to anyone who has electricity coming to their residence on ways to save on the use of electricity. And so some of that is making improvements to your house. Some of it's just in practices and devices and things like that. But we decided to, and the General Assembly did this last year, we decided to make a more specific focus on low and moderate income folks. And so the Department of Housing and Community Development at the state is now charged with making sure that these energy efficiency products and services are offered to low income customers, and they're targeting it with some state efforts on that part to make sure that customers have this available. The other thing that we've been trying to do is there's a whole lot of products that are offered by Google, Amazon, some of the more tech companies that actually allow you to sort of manage how you use electricity. And one of the concerns that I've had is that these companies may be marketing these things to certain segments of the customer base, the ones that they think can afford this kind of thing or would be interested in this, and ignoring other parts of the customer base. So I want to try to make sure, and we don't have any regulatory authority over these companies, but we've been trying to use the art of persuasion to encourage them to offer these products and services to all customers, because folks that have lower incomes probably could use these services a lot more than some of the folks that live in the suburbs.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other couple of things that we're doing here at the Public Service Commission is we actually have a proceeding where we're examining the price that's being charged customers and trying to figure out the way, if there's a way to factor in what's known as the energy burden. So, what a person pays for electricity as a percentage of their income varies, from demographic levels. And so we're trying to examine ways to figure out a rate that can be more accommodating for customers that have less resources. And then the final thing we're doing is an examination of the billing and collection practices that the utilities undertake if someone can't pay the bill, what actions the companies can do regarding maintaining their service. And so we're having hearings on that. So it's sort of a multi faceted effort to try to deal with the issue of helping people keep the lights on, literally.
Well, that's what, of course, tonight is all about, keeping the lights on, making sure we're maintaining that. Thank you so much, Mr. Hoover, Ms. Bolton, for this phenomenal conversation. In closing, what is the website people can go to? Of course, we have everything on the screen, but just closing, where they can go for any information, resources, and more.
So you can check out our websites, psc.state.md.us. And I know that that's like an acronym mouthful. So if you just Google Maryland Public Service Commission, you're going to get it. In addition, MarylandEnergyChoice.com. I'm sorry, it's the abbreviation MD for Maryland. MDEnergyChoice.com is where you can go to find more information about retail energy shopping. And you can also give my team a call at 410-767-8028. That'll take you to the Consumer Affairs Division. Again, the number is 410-767-8028.
Thank you so much again, Mr. Chair and Ms. Bolton. Have a phenomenal night. And of course, we're going to keep these lights on.
Okay, thank you very much. It's been a great conversation.
Thanks for having us.
You as well. Thank you.